Okay.
You never know if 12 is the low. I certainly don't. That's what my charts are telling me. But I am a long-term believer in Bitcoin. So once we are below 20, I will slowly start to accumulate a long hodl position.
In this interview, Gareth Soloway talked about how 20K might not be the bottom for Bitcoin. He revealed his ultimate target for Bitcoin's bottom, which surprisingly was much lower than we anticipated. He talked about the 4 cycles in Bitcoin right now and talked about his trading strategies for each one of them. He talked about when we could expect the next short squeeze for Bitcoin and talked about his long-term prediction for the crypto market. He laid out his exact strategies to tackle the long-term price trajectory of Bitcoin and also talked about his favorite strategies that swing traders can use. He then mentioned a very risky form of trading and why you should stay away from it, and then moved on to talking about why he's a long-term believer of Bitcoin. He then said, "So, once we are below 20K, I will slowly start to accumulate little. This is the exact position where I'll be buying." He then talked about his strategies for the stock market, more specifically tech stocks, and when we can expect a bounce for them. Also, I'd just like to remind you that we're giving away $100 to a random subscriber at the end of this month. To take part in it, all you have to do is subscribe to our channel, turn on post notifications, like this video, and leave a comment in the comments section below. Good luck. Now, let's look at his interview.
So right now, stocks firming up. Bitcoin's still sitting here above the 5-day low. What do you think? Is it going to break?
Yeah, so generally you do see breaks of even numbers because the stops need to be flushed out that are put at 20,000. So I do think you'll see a short-term break, but I'm actually looking for a bounce off of that break. So I think you could go back as high as 30,000 over the next month or so. The key here is looking at the 10-year yield. We're starting to see a weekly topping tail on the 10-year yield. We know if the 10-year yield comes down, it's likely signaling risk on for things like Bitcoin and tech stocks. And then also looking at the dollar hit a major trend line as well. And if the dollar declines, then that is also a short-term positive for Bitcoin. So ultimately, great flush down to 20. I'd like to see it just flush out those stops. And then I think you start looking for a near-term bounce, unfortunately, before the next leg lower.
Is there a point here where the technicals will become secondary to the narrative erosion in Bitcoin's inflation hedge story? Worst performing asset since CPI broke out.
Yeah, so I think the key on Bitcoin is understanding it's a very young asset. It's basically 13 years old. From 2009, we're in 2022. So you have to remember, and every investor that's into crypto always wants to say, oh, this is the hedge against inflation. This is the hedge against all that stuff. But 13-year-olds don't think logically, and we have to think of it in those terms. Gold is thousands of years old. It moves very slowly, methodically. Crypto moves wildly. Until it matures as an asset, you have to be ready for these wild swings. And so don't look at it as a hedge yet. I do think it matures into that eventually, though.
Okay, there's the long-term belief that you've always maintained throughout the mostly bearish trades you've been making for us in the last 8 months or so. The thing that's interesting technically, Gareth, is it looks like 20K is a big level to me. It looks like there's not much down till 10, but it sounds like you're saying that we could break that big 20 whole number and not stretch too far lower before springing back?
Yeah, so it's just the weird way things work. The markets tend to want to flush through even numbers. And then, the psychology of the market and investors is that everyone places their stop at the same level, right? So you have a lot of stops right at 20,000. Everyone's been talking about buying 20,000. So usually what will happen, the market will push Bitcoin below that, making everyone question, stop out, get nervous, and then a lot of times you'll snap back. And again, if you look at those other things like the 10-year pulling back, maybe the dollar pulling back, those could be little things that lift it back up there. But I do have a downside ultimate target of 12,000. So, I mean, it's just an interim bounce, although it could be as much as 50% from 20 to 30. But nonetheless, it's just an interim bounce before further downside.
Okay, so you're thinking we could break down through 20, squeezes people out, they chase it back up. And generally long term, you're a believer, but then you've also got a 12,000 target. Where does the 12,000 fit in? If we're going to firm up 20 and long term, how does that walk me through that, Gareth?
Yeah, so the 12,000 target comes from a measured move. If you take the high from November 2021 to the low that was back in, let's see here, in January before that 3-month consolidation, if you take that distance and drop it down, you get exactly right around 12,000. And then also, if you look at previous cycles on Bitcoin, there's always an 80 to 85% correction. So if you look at 80 to 85% of 69,000, you get 12,000 as well. So basically, what this is telling us, we know we have 4-year cycles in Bitcoin. Right now, we're right in the middle of that 4-year cycle, the down move, and also that 80 to 85% puts us right around 12,000. And bottom line is, you know, if you look at the NASDAQ isn't even back to pre-COVID highs yet, let alone an earnings recession, which is likely coming. And what that tells us is if the tech stocks still have another 10, 20, 30% downside, which I think they do, there's no way Bitcoin is stopping at 20 and then starting to reverse, because again, it's a risk on, risk off trade. If the NASDAQ falls sharply, you expect Bitcoin to follow suit.
Okay, so that sounds like if we break 20, maybe we could open up. Is there a way to put these views into a trade that threads these needles, that short term, you're looking for this kind of short squeeze bounce off 20, but you've got that longer term technical down at 12, but we also want to own it long term. Is there a way to navigate that? Or do you just wait and see the next move?
If you're a trader, or if you're someone who wants to swing trade, what you do is you put a very small order, maybe 19.5, 19.25, and again, make sure you understand you're trading counter trend. Counter trend is riskier, so you don't do a big amount. All right, now you do a small amount. You understand that if it stays below 20 for a more than 2 or 3 days, you exit for a small loss and you look to rebuy at 12. If you get a bounce back to, let's say, 28 to 30, I would say sell into that and then wait patiently for that next flush that should take you down to hopefully 12 or so. I'm looking to buy, and just to be clear, you never know if 12 is the low. I certainly don't. That's what my charts are telling me. But I am a long-term believer in Bitcoin. So once we are below 20, I will slowly start to accumulate a long hodl position where I'll be buying maybe every 3,000 down, just small, accumulating that longer-term position.
Okay, so you're more looking short term at the squeeze, but bail at 28.30. So you're thinking the squeeze higher comes before the potential move to the technical of 12, if that is the downside. So. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I do think that there's too much bearishness. We're starting to see tech catch a bid here, even after the nasty sell-off yesterday. If we can continue that trend of upside, which if the 10-year yield does continue to come back, it does insinuate people will rotate into tech stocks, and that also is a positive. So I think, again, you look for a near-term bounce, then one more flush out, and then, again, look for that bottom to be put in. Probably about November-ish, I would expect us to be fully in with the lows.
And once again, I'd just like to remind you that we're giving away $100 to a random subscriber at the end of this month. To take part in it, all you have to do is subscribe to our channel, turn on post notifications, like this video, and leave a comment in the comments section below. These likes and subscriptions motivate us to keep making videos every day. I'd also request you to tell us if you have any suggestions about our content. I'll see you in the next video.